Hello, everybody, and welcome to the inaugural episode of Touchline Banter. Today, I'm your host, Ruben Chavez. With me, Shayan Karimi. We're two students who went to the College of Sports Media and love talking soccer or football, whatever you call it. And
footy. Let's keep it.
Yeah. We'll call it football here, but if you call it soccer, you're still allowed to listen. So, in today's inaugural episode, we're just going to break down the transfer market. Really, we're going to look at some of the deals that we like, that we think are the top deals. Some deals that may still happen, and some teams that aren't really doing much. So maybe their fans are a bit antsy. We'll have to break all that down. But yeah, Shayan, you can introduce yourself a bit before we get into it if you want.
Yeah, I mean, this has been a long time coming. We talked about doing Touchline Banter for a while, and this is finally the first episode of it, the up-and-coming project that we'll be working on for hopefully a really long time. But it's always a good day to talk about footy. We just had a great Euros and a interesting Copa America, I would say. Feisty, I think, was the best way to describe it. But now it's the funnest time of the summer. You with transfers, rumors, players signing. If you play career mode, just like I'm sure Ruben, me and you do a lot. That's the best part of playing the game, right? Signing players, finding players that fit. So it's a really fun time, even though there's not a lot of games going on, because there's a lot of rumors to focus on, and just like you mentioned, speculation and players moving. So there's a lot to talk about. And I guess let's just jump right into it. The first signing we're going to talk about is going to be with a defender. We got to go Arsenal. Basically, according to Fabrizio Romano, all the signings and all the formal steps to close the deal for Bologna's star defender, Riccardo Calafiori, is basically a done deal. Medical tests and contract signing is apparently going to follow up this week. He's been dubbed the Paolo Maldini, the new Italian prodigy. He's a center back who can play left back, and it looks like Arsenal want a left-footed defender, a player who can fit in that left back role. We know that they tried Zinchenko there. It kind of has worked, but the physicality seems to get to him. It looks like they're trying to find a spot for Jakub Kiwior, who was doing pretty well as a young player they signed before they put Calafiori in that position. But what do you think so far? Because I'm a big fan of the move. I think it really pushes them into that title contention.
I like it, and I do think it's a step for them to be legitimate champions. It's like you're saying, like the left back, they tried Zinchenko, it didn't really work as well as I'm sure they'd hoped. And Calafiori offers a different profile. If you look at the Italian team, he was their best player. It was him and Donnarumma, right? And in the game that he didn't play, they had nothing going forward. And it's crazy to say that he may have been one of their best offensive players, even in playing in that center back role, because he naturally liked to kind of bomb forward with the ball, bring the ball up the pitch. He liked to make things happen. He's strong. He's an intelligent defender, and it's clear that his instincts are kind of just great at the position. He bailed Italy out a lot, and this is an Italian team that, despite what we're used to historically, was not really at the level that I think many thought that they could be. So I like the move. I think, obviously, in the run-up to doing this and recording this, we were talking about it, and I'll pose the question that you kind of were asking me. Do you think this is Arteta just trying to copy Pep's for center back style, right? Because in a way, it's a very defensive minded team to have when it's just four central defenders just along the back line.
Yeah, I mean, it's weird. It's always the comparison is going to be there with Arteta and Pep. The apprentice becoming the master and taking over. If all those Star Wars master and apprentice links, if you want to make for all the Star
Pep
Wars.
Guardiola is Palpatine.
Absolutely,
he has ruined
Palpatine.
football.
100%, Emperor Palpatine. Best comparison. We got to Photoshop that into there. But anyway, I do think he is following that model. I don't think he's necessarily copying Pep, but I do think he likes to have four defensive players in that back line. At the same time, you did highlight it well. Calafiori is a great ball-playing and ball-moving defender. Just like you mentioned in that game where Italy got knocked out and they were really terrible, they missed Calafiori, not just on the defensive end, but in a way of developing their attack. And you can see it on Arsenal on that left side. Zinchenko was working for a little bit. He is one of the most technically gifted players on Arsenal, but the physicality gets to him a lot. And Jakub Kiwior, a young player who I mentioned earlier that they signed, he came in and he did pretty well, but he's still young. He's still pretty raw. And I kind of view it as basically Arteta copying the same thing he has with Ben White and Bukayo Saka, because White just assures Saka that he can just go forward, do all the offensive things that he wants. He doesn't really have to worry too much about tracking back. But at the same time, you do still have a ball-playing, competent defender who can move forward and engage in the attack there. And I think with Martinelli or Trossard or whoever else they have on that left side, Calafiori offers that option. And again, it's defensive coverage. You need a squad of players to win in the Premier League and in any league in general. We saw what happened when Saliba got injured. They fell off pretty hard 2 years ago. So I think he offers defensive coverage. And to be honest, I'd give them like an A grade if we're trying to grade this signing. I think it's really good. I mean, he helped Bologna, who are in Champions League. A lot of people don't remember that, but they're in a Champions League position. So I think it's really good. I don't think they necessarily needed more defenders. I do think like maybe the striker and attacking position was probably more of a priority, at least in my opinion. Maybe someone like an Ivan Toney, a Jonathan David, who we'll talk about later, maybe could have fit. But I think he's still playing with that Havertz move. But I like the signing. What do you think?
I agree with you. I think it has to be an A because Calafiori is clearly a talented player, and it does just provide flexibility and tactical flexibility. So Arteta, very much like Pep, likes to set his team up in different ways and to really maximize potential matchups. And I think Calafiori offers that in spades. And it's like you're saying, this year is only going to be featuring more games. We haven't even talked about it yet. Obviously, it's still early on the podcast, but like the Champions League format is completely different. So there's going to be more games. It's a league table now. And then even looking forward to the summer, there's a Club World Cup now that's expanded. So you need a deep squad. Like the idea that you're going to go through an entire season and not have one or two injuries at crucial positions, that's like a fantasy at this point. Or at the very least, you need to like rotate the squad heavily. So he offers them that. I agree with you. I'm surprised that their first move wasn't to get a true number 9 or even more depth in the midfield, because I found defensively they were pretty good. I mean, they drew City away at the Etihad and stuff, and they were hard to break down, but they didn't get the goals when they needed to, right? You know, they were sometimes just lacked that cutting edge. And Havertz, while I do think does a lot right, he has too much of the Morata in him where he just can't hit the target. There's
Poor Morata.
Anytime there's a striker that can't score, it's either Lukaku or Morata. Those are the two people I think of instantly. And Havertz does so much good off the ball. Like he runs well, defends well, he opens up space. He's a good. He could play a good pass, but if you give him the ball in front of the net, it's awful. So I thought they would go for an attacker, but still, I love the move. I think any team in the Premier League would have loved to have Calafiori, really. So.
Yeah, I think just to quickly wrap up on this, when you look at like the Arsenal potential 11, I mean, I've been looking at images with him, Calafiori in the squad. It does look very solid and a secure team. You know, David Raya, and then you have Ben White as a right back, Saliba and Gabriel as the two center backs, arguably the best pairing, if not one of, in the Premier League. Now you add Calafiori on that left to replace Zinchenko or Kivior, and it looks like it's going to be like a Partey, Rice, Odegaard midfield. It looks like Rice is probably going to play more in that 8 role rather than a 6 or more of a DM. I think Partey is going to be introduced back into the squad. And then you have the classic Bukayo Saka, Gabriel Martinelli, and whoever they choose to play up top. So it's definitely secure defensively, which Arsenal back in the day, you know, in the Wenger days, they definitely weren't very defensive, and they were not physical. And this is a very physical team, and they can match up with the best in the Premier League. So I do like that a lot. I think it's a great signing. Do you agree with like an A? You'd give them the same ranking?
Yeah, I think it has to be an A. I think it has to be an A because he's one of the, you know, it's not quite how it used to be. I think when we were younger, where like if a player has a great tournament, it automatically means they're getting a big move and teams would just splash crazy amounts of cash. Like, to be fair, we might still see that with some of the players we're talking about later, like Nico Williams and stuff. But Calafiori had a great Euros. He's had a great club season in Bologna. Like you said, they might have been the Italian version of Bayern Leverkusen. They just didn't win. But if you look at it, they got a Champions League spot, and their coach moved on to the job at Juventus. So it's clear that people are like impressed with how they played tactically and impressed with their players. Calafiori built on that. It's a great move, and I think he'll bring a lot to North London.
You want to talk about the next signing? We're sticking with another defender.
Yeah, I mean, United made 2 moves. The one that we're going to talk about first is Lenny Yoro. Obviously, for us, it was a bit sad because our team, Real Madrid, were linked to him, and it just seemed like Madrid were like, we're not going to pay. I think they were saying like 35 million, 40 million. and
Yeah.
United went over the top and dropped 60 million on him, right? So I do like the signing. I think Lenny Yoro is a really talented player. If I was a Man United fan, the only thing I would be worried about, and I obviously positive, you've got a good young player. He's big. He's like 6'2", 6'3", really rangy. He's clearly talented. I'm worried about the fact that he only has 1 year left on his deal. That's a lot of money to get. I mean, unless you have assurances that he's going to renew, that's a lot of money to spend on what could be a rental, realistically. Two, United have not developed young talent the best recently. Obviously, this is a new team. Like we're seeing a new, more focused strategy in terms of transfers, and it's clear that they're trying to go younger, which makes sense. You know, we're seeing Rashford probably is going to be gone. They're still going to try to get off of Harry Maguire. Varane is officially gone and released. We'll see what happens with Casemiro and Amrabat and some of those other players who I think people can say more easily now. Those are dead wood players. But I'm worried for his development because of how United have been as a club. His talent, I think, is undeniable, but he's still 18, and if you put him in a bad situation, which Old Trafford can be, we've seen what's happened to Jadon Sancho, right? So is Eric Ten Hag going to get the best out of him? That's my only question. I don't know how you feel about that.
I would say I agree with most of your sentiments there. The biggest thing for me is that, yeah, there was only 1 year left on his contract. So it's a lot of money to spend. They have apparently, according to the BBC, secured him until 2029. So they are investing in a long-term deal in a player who is young, who is just 18 years old, if I'm correct. 18 years old. So he's definitely one for the future. And I think he could possibly slot in right away. I mean, might get a couple games to get him into the squad. But I do think that something that possibly you could have signed for a free in 12 months down the line, it is a lot of money to spend for like 60 million euros. It's looking like, 62 million is what's reported. So, but at the same time, when teams like we just spoke, when Real Madrid comes in for a player like that, you know that there's probably something there. The scouting system of Real Madrid is one of the best in the world, if not, the best. So they know what young talent is good and to invest in. So they do need a center back. Harry Maguire has been playing there. Rafael Varane has been released. Unfortunately, it looks like his legs have gone. And he was definitely a really, really big fall off from his Real Madrid days. So they need a center back. He is kind of raw. He is, like you mentioned, he's big. He's versatile. He can play the ball. He can, go up in the air. Obviously, he's young. You look at him, it's a young profile. He's only 18 years old. He definitely needs to, bulk up a bit, work getting those protein powders and get in the gym for the Premier League. But Lille has had a lot of good players come out of there. Eden Hazard, Chelsea legend, Premier League legend too. One of the best players to play in the Premier League came out of Lille, and they're a good team who builds a lot of young players from their system. I do like the signing of Euro. I do think it was a little too much money, but I think United was so much in need of a defender, and with Real Madrid just kind of lurking around there and possibly coming in to swoop them away, I think they just had to pay that money because they needed someone. And you look at it, Lisandro Martinez, they get Lenny Yoro next to him. That's a pretty good partnership, I would say, but I think it's going to take time to adjust. And I think that's the biggest thing. I think it was a key point that you made, that Ten Hag, that's the biggest question for me. Can Eric Ten Hag, is he tactically inept enough to get the best out of this kid?
Yeah, I think that'll be interesting. And we talked about it with Arsenal. There's a road for them to play 3 center backs. You put Martinez out there on the left. I know he's been played there before, and he's a bit smaller anyway, so maybe you just want to take away his lack of height on those set pieces, put him out on the wing, use some of his offensive abilities. Like, they could get a lot more solid back there, especially since Luke Shaw up and down with his fitness. And he is getting older, right? Like, he barely played in the Euros, mostly because of his injury, right? So there's definitely a lot of interesting ways they could set up. United weren't done there, though. They also got Xerxes, the striker, over in a move. How do you feel about that move?
First of all, great name. I just can't stop saying it. Joshua Xerxes. Sounds like, I don't know, like one of the Persian kings back in the day or something like that.
Honestly, yeah.
Yeah. But in all seriousness, he's another young player. It looks like United is kind of getting their transfer strategy back in order again. Last season, it was basically, hey, Ten Hag, who do you like? Who's Dutch? Who do you know that's good? That's basically what it felt like, to put it very simply. they are targeting players who do have potential, who are younger, who fit their squad and their model better. And it seems to be working for them, because I do like this signing as well. He scored 11 league goals, and again, was with Calafiori in that Bologna side that got them into the Champions League spots. I believe he had 7 assists. When you look at his heat map, he kind of moves like all around the field. He is a striker, but he plays on that left and right side. He's mobile. He's strong. Again, I just think it's going to take some time for him to adjust to the Premier League. I do think playing against Italian defenders will really help, and the Italian league is one I think that translates kind of a bit better to the Premier League than other leagues. A lot of players coming from France or the Dutch league, or sometimes even Portuguese leagues, they sometimes have a tougher time. But I think Xerxes is a good fit. And again, they needed a striker. Rashford's not going to be there very much longer. And, up top, Anthony hasn't been working as well on that right side. I think Xerxes also offers flexibility. So I like the move overall. I'd give it probably like a B+.
Yeah, I agree. I think for Euro, I would also give a B+, and I would probably give a B+ for Xerxes as well. Because how they're going to line up is going to be interesting now. They have Anthony up there. They have Garnacho. We'll see what happens with Rashford, but he's most likely going to be moved on. And now you have Xerxes and you have Rasmus Højlund, right? So you have a couple different options. I think him and Højlund both are strong and physical players. I think Xerxes might be a bit faster. When it comes to the link-up play too, I prefer the way that Xerxes kind of does it more than Højlund, but Højlund was kind of thrown in the deep end at a chaotic time at Manchester United. It seems like Ten Hag saved his job on that FA Cup win. And while I agree that, sure, that was an impressive performance, I don't always agree he won this trophy, so that means he's good enough to stay. We'll see if he can really build on that platform. And I think these two young players are going to be crucial because, like you're saying, these feel like good moves. This isn't like United a couple of years ago where they're just buying players. And even the Amrabat move felt more like, really? Like, he had one good World Cup and you're bringing him in, and don't you already kind of have players to play his position, and don't you kind of need players in different positions than what he's offering you? And then he ended up being relegated. He barely played because Ten Hag didn't trust him. So these players feel like they fit more of what Ten Hag is trying to do in his possession-based system, holding up the ball, real possession stuff. So I like both of the moves. I really do. It's just it's going to be interesting to see if Ten Hag is, like you said, adept enough to get the best out of him, because I think that's what it's going to come down to.
Yeah, and I'm going to go out on a limb. I hope I'm proved wrong, because I'd like to see United be a good team in the Premier League, and the Premier League be competitive, because it is kind of starting to turn into one or two team leagues. Unfortunately, I don't think he is tactically adept enough. I think Ten Hag relied on the system at Ajax that worked, and that team kind of plays into a system that they already know and they're bred into. And in United, he's showing a lot of holes, and he relied on a lot of individual talent to get him through it. Again, I want to see Xerxes succeed. I want to see Euro succeed. I think Ten Hag is not the right one to do it. But again, that's a conversation for another day. We can break down that more into my hate towards Ten Hag, and I think he's completely unfit for the job. But let's move on to over our next topic. We're going to focus on
talking about United, though.
Yeah, we're going to stick with United. So either way, I can talk bad about Ten Hag a little bit more, but let's talk about players who might be on the move. Transfer season, we know that players always linked with going here and there, multiple different clubs. Clubs don't always, fulfill a signing, or something goes wrong last minute. And two players who are linked to United, Nasser Mazraoui, right back for Bayern Munich. He's been kind of in and out of the side. It looks like Kimmich might be going back into that right back role. He played it again a lot for Germany at the Euros. And Xavi Simons, up-and-coming player with Netherlands. He's played pretty good for his club side as well. If they get both of these signings, Ruben, do you think that really pushes them over the hill?
It's funny because I think Xavi Simons is the better player of the two, but Masraoui feels more key because he plays right back, and I think he would offer them something different. Juan Bissaka's probably on his way out. I think they're looking to sell him as well, and there's been interest from West Ham and stuff. And it's clear that the Juan Bissaka experiment didn't work out, right? They bought him from Crystal Palace expecting him to be something that maybe he just couldn't be, or maybe the situation around him never allowed him to be. Either way, Mazraoui's interesting. I wonder if they get that over over the line again, it would be investing heavily in the defense. I think Xavi Simons is a really interesting player, really fun to watch. I thought that the Dutch were always the best when they took off Depay and were just like, hey, we'll let Simons take whatever position he wants on the field, kind of operate wherever he likes and give him the creativity to unlock the defense. They looked a lot better. They should have built the team around him. But unfortunately, the Dutch system doesn't really want to play around a number 10, like a traditional number 10, which is kind of what he reminds me of in the fact that he likes to touch the ball, really be creative and move. I don't know if he's a fit for United, though, because they already have Bruno Fernandes, who does a lot of that too. And I don't see it kind of working, especially since Ten Hag plays that really possession base, like, move, like total football style of game. I don't know if Xavi Simons particularly fits to that. I would rather see Simons go somewhere else. But if they do manage to get those two signings over the line, what I do think it's indicating is that United are here to stay. Like, they're trying to get back to being relevant and a team that is going to affect the title challenge. Because when's the last time they really did, right? Like, I would say the last time you would say like they had a real hand in it was when they had Mourinho. And
the second place finish. Yeah.
And even
I think it's been a while.
They weren't that close. So that's how I feel about it. I think both those players are good. One of them makes more sense to me just in terms of like, Basaka is leaving and you're bringing a guy basically like a 1-for-1. I don't know if I like Simons in the United squad based on what they already have in there with Mainu and Bruno, but that's my worry again.
I mean, I don't know. Overall, when I look at these signings, I think Mazraoui, he does elevate them at the right back position. I do think Dalot is a good player. I do think he's had good performances. He's versatile. He can play on the right and left side. Wan-Bissaka, you're right, he has been linked with a move. It looks like he's probably leaving. The experiment kind of hasn't worked, but he also has had good performances. He's come into the squad and he's been one of the starters at that right back position. So Mazraoui does elevate them, but I just wonder, is this where you really need to invest your money? And that's the same way I feel with Xavi Simons. Young, electrifying player, great performances in the Euros, a great goal against England in the semifinals, really shows his talent there. He's had apparently, has some off field and, like personality issues and stuff, but he's young. You expect that with a player of that talent who's had a move into PSG. And to be honest, what player in PSG doesn't have personality issues? We can list a bunch of those, but I don't see the need there. Bruno's a great number 10. He works in the role, if they play that 4-2-3-1 or that 4-3-3, I just view it as a bit of a logjam in that midfield. You do need players. We do realize that you do need the squad, but we mentioned it earlier, with the likes of Amrabat and Casemiro, I feel like a number 8 or a number 6 is more of the player that United need to invest in, or even a striker. I get it. Yeah, he's a young player, and you ideally don't want to see him go to your rival. But is this really where they need to invest? Because the spine of the team still has questions for me, and Euro looks like them trying to shore up the spine of the team. Same thing with Xerxes. But I don't think Simons definitely fits into that squad right away. And again, with Ten Hag, does he take advantage of a young player like that in that number 10 position? He hasn't necessarily elevated Bruno. I don't know. Do you think Bruno's been better under Ten Hag necessarily?
No, I think Bruno, it's tough for Bruno because I understand why people dislike him sometimes. They think he's got a bit of an attitude in his antics, but I genuinely just feel it's somebody that's frustrated because on both the club level and internationally, his managers are not doing the best to get the most out of him. So he's stuck trying to pull things out of the fire. Like the way that Portugal set up, and I thought that Bernardo Silva is obviously a great player, but why have Bernardo Silva and Bruno on at the same time when they play fundamentally different styles of football? Bernardo's trying to pass it into the goal, and Bruno's just the type to let's hit this long ball, let's hit this decisive pass. You make that run and I'll hit you, right? Put fast guys around him that are going to make those smart, intelligent runs, open up the pitch for him, allow him to grow into the game and be a bit more freewheeling. And I feel the same at United. Ten Hag has not helped progress Bruno. Bruno has been saving Manchester United and by extension Ten Hag by virtue of his talent, but not because of anything that they're doing to help him. And when you look at the fact that Mainu's definitely going to be a starter this year, right? He's got to be in the starting 11 based off of his Euros. England completely changed how they looked when he was in versus how they didn't. Whether or not you think that they reached their full potential is kind of inconsequential. It became Declan Rice, Bellingham, and Mainu. And they tried everybody else in that position that Mainu played. But like you're saying, they lack a number 8. They lack a real good center defensive mid because Mainu can't do that, because we saw the one trade-off was, okay, you have a little bit more going forward. He's a very progressive player. He looks to attack. It makes you weaker on the back. We're already worried about the Manchester spine. Siemens is not helping that. Like, he's not. It's not going to work. So I'm skeptical about it for sure.
Let's bring up the second player. Who's another player who's been like basically everywhere?
Jonathan David. A lot of teams need strikers. We were going to talk about Ivan Toney, but I feel like a lot of people talk about Ivan Toney, and we're in Canada. Let's give some love to the Canadian. Also from Lille, so there's a link there with Euro, obviously. And I think the thing that'll help David maybe get a prime move is that the money for him is going to be less than what Brentford want for Ivan Toney. Brentford are really holding on to Toney really close. It's been reported they want like 50 mil. Oof. I bet you could get Lille, like you get David cheaper than that, and maybe just add incentives. And Lille will take it because they're a smaller club and they know what their model is. Whereas Brentford, I think, still believes that they can keep Toney around for a season to improve their spot in the league potentially. But Jonathan David, he had a pretty solid Copa America. I'm sure Canada fans would have liked to see him put the ball in the back of the net more. But I like his profile. He's got a good nose for the goal. He's a traditional number 9, but he does a lot on the pitch, and he's got a high motor. I think he can play that high press style that's so popular. And there are so many teams that could use just a clinical number 9. Like Arsenal could use him. We just talked about United. I know they have Højlund and they just signed Xerxes, but Xerxes can play out from the left a bit too. I think there's a bit of fluidity with him. I would like to see a team in the Prem, especially a mid-table team that's just lacking that goal punch, go after him. Like, I don't see what they would be losing. He's a great player. And even a team like Spurs could use, again, somebody to just help ease the goal burden off of Son and Madison. Because when Madison went down, their whole team kind of cratered, right? So I think there's a lot of spots that make sense. So I'm really hoping that David gets his move into the Prem.
Yeah, I mean, if you're a Canadian soccer fan, you've heard about David. It looks like he's been linked with a move everywhere, whether it's AC Milan, Inter Milan, the Premier League, Spurs, Chelsea, Arsenal, wherever. It seems like he's linked every single summer ever since he's blown up at Lille. But he is a great striker, and you mentioned it. 24 years old, he's a prototypical striker, 84 goals and 183 appearances, so it's about like the goal every other game kind of stat. So that's pretty good for him in terms of statistics of putting the ball in the net. I have questions about what his next step is. I wonder if, is he a top 4 type of striker? If Arsenal sign him, will that be like a too big of a shoe to fill for him? Or is he more of kind of like a West Ham or a Newcastle type of thing, which are, not to dog either one of them. They're both great teams. And they're on the come up, and they're definitely in that top 6 range. Apparently, like West Ham has pulled out as of the most recent article that I read.
Yeah, I saw that too.
Apparently, they met Lille's asking price of 30 million, which it is a lot less than Ivan Toney, and 25 million less than what Brentford apparently want. Apparently, they had issues with the agent fees, but I feel like Lille want to sell him because it's his last year on his contract. They're going to have to get some sort of money for him. It's just about, getting all the fees in order and what sort of money are they willing to let him go for. To me, I think a Spurs would be good for him. Replace kind of Richarlison there and kind of that Harry Kane void. Richarlison hasn't kind of really worked in that striker position. We know that they play Heung-min Son there, but he kind of likes to play it more off the left. I think under Ange, he could do pretty well. Postecoglou ball is fun to watch. He's building a young Spurs side that has a lot of young players and they're up and coming. And I like the way that they look. I also think Newcastle could be good, with Eddie Howe, a great manager who I rate a lot, plays a really high pressing, energetic football, exciting team to watch. And especially if someone like Alexander Isak, who I think will probably be a better fit for Arsenal, goes into that team because he's Premier League proven. I think David goes in there as well and fits in pretty well. But I just wonder that I don't want David, just as a fan of Canadian soccer, to not make the wrong move and to go into a step that is too much for him. I just question, how good is David? What is his potential at right now? Is he a top 4? Is he a Champions League and title winning striker? Or is he kind of still developing, and does he need to go to, like, does he need the move before the big move, if that makes sense? Does he need the West Ham to the Arsenal or something like that, if that makes sense?
I honestly don't disagree. As much as I brought up Arsenal, I think a move to Newcastle or to Spurs, like two teams who obviously want to qualify for the Champions League, that is the overall project. But because they have new managers, there's a new direction that the transfer targets are taking. Those teams feel like, yeah, come and be a part of the system, learn and grow. We don't need you to basically be Harry Kane from day one. Whereas like Arsenal, if he goes there, this is a team that's trying to win the title. Like they've already finished second place twice, right? So there is no room to make a mistake or for failure. So I do think it'd be better for him to take maybe a mid-table move. I wouldn't be surprised to see him go out to Italy. There are some Italian teams that are interested in him, and maybe that's the move before the move. But yeah, it's definitely his next step has to be very carefully considered.
I was interested that AC Milan went for Morata. I thought he would fit good there. I thought David would be a better fit than Morata in terms of a player, because I understand that Morata like won the Euros, but like he had some pretty
Did
cool
he win the
performances.
Euros?
I know if you want to tell, I think you're a big fan of Morata there as well.
Yeah, I love him. Oh my God, what a useless striker, honestly. Just like he does so much, but he doesn't score goals. I don't know. He's okay. Like whenever they subbed him off, like when they subbed him off in the finals, I was like, oh, okay, good. Like they're gonna win now. Like,
yeah, and then Oyarzabal scored.
Yeah,
yeah.
I was like, yeah, because they just move better without him. He's not that good, but whatever.
Yeah,
I have my own beef with Morata.
Yeah, well, he has his Euro medal, so I guess he's okay.
He does.
But yeah, I thought I thought Milan would be a good fit for David. But it's interesting to see. I think he should make a move. I think staying at Lille wouldn't be the best trajectory for him. But it's gonna be interesting. Everybody needs a striker now, so he's got to go somewhere.
Yeah, absolutely. Speaking of a player that had good Euros, though, we want to talk about Nico Williams. Now, Williams isn't just linked to teams in the Prem. I think most of the noise from the Prem came like Arsenal links. There was some Villa links last year, but that seems like they're priced out now because PSG and Barcelona both want him. Barcelona looking to take out a loan to try to get Nico Williams because of their continuing money problems. Nothing that spending more money can't get you out of a money hole, I guess. But Nico Williams might be one of the most exciting players in the world. He might be the most exciting player in the world if his teammate Lamine Yamal didn't also exist and do what he did in the Euros. I like Williams a lot. Again, talking about someone who's probably ready for a move. He's definitely like ready for a move. Do you worry? Like, is Barcelona the right move? Do you think PSG is the right move? Or are those clubs, because of all the chaos around them, do you think that would be a misstep? Or do you think it doesn't matter?
PSG is a bit tough for me in terms of, with the whole chaos that is PSG, the locker room, the whole top-down structure of the club and everything going on there. They have a lot of players playing in the forward positions. They do have a bit of a void on the left side, especially with Mbappe leaving. But I think he does fit better in Barcelona. I mean, they need more attacking options. Ansu Fati hasn't really worked out. He's been injured a lot. He's a talent that they had who didn't really fulfill the potential, at least they were hoping for. Ferran Torres is really in and out of the side. They do have Lewandowski. Rafinha had a much better second season. He does look really well on that right. So, if you have Rafinha on the right, Williams on the left, and Lewandowski in the middle, that does look like a very, very potent and formidable attacking line. And he showed it at the Euros. He's a young player, but he's exciting to watch. That's what I really liked about him. He's so young, but he's not afraid to, go past defenders, go down to the byline, mix it up, cut inside, go outside, shoot on his favorite foot. He can do a little bit of everything. He's not so one-sided. And that's what I think a lot of wingers are missing, is that you just see one thing from them. It's either they go in behind, or they cut inside on their right foot, or they just cross the ball. He mixes it up so much, and he was so fun to watch with Lamine Yamal and them just, their fun little antics on the sidelines and like doing rock, paper, scissors to see who has to do their homework first or something like that after winning games. But I'm interested to see how Barcelona, if they do go in for him, he's going to cost a lot. Apparently upwards of like 80 to 100 million euros is what the Athletic Bilbao is asking for. He's listed at 58 million euros, but apparently they're going to want a lot more than that.
Absolutely.
And he's definitely going to go for a lot more. I mean, if Xavi Simons is listed, it could be asked for 100 million. I think Williams is definitely going to go for more. I think Arsenal should go for him as well. I think they've been linked with him for a while. They need help on that left side. You need a squad. Trossard can come in and play multiple different positions. Martinelli's done pretty well, but I think Williams elevates any team that he goes into.
100%. 100%. And speaking on, if Barcelona do get him, I think that's massive for them just based off of how Yamal and him got on at the Euros and that goal that they scored against England. Like, Yamal clearly knows the runs that Williams is going to make because Yamal had the presence of mind to slow down, take a touch, then play that pass, and Nico Williams ran on to it and was never going to miss. As soon as he got that ball on his foot, you knew it was going in. So it would be a coup for Barcelona. I don't know if they have the money for it, obviously. And obviously that's why they're applying for a loan. But for me, Arsenal should make a big move for him because he does clear up a lot on that left side. If you have him and Bukayo on opposite wings, that would be really, really scary.
Yeah, it would just be funny. We are Real Madrid fans, but just in general, it would just be funny if he just goes to like another team in Barcelona because of this how poorly they've just structured their finances and, taking out so much more loans. And now they want to do again just to let him go. Okay. Because you couldn't manage your finances. That would just be really interesting to watch. And I think like they might have to make this signing. I don't know how you feel about this with, Mbappe going to Real Madrid and Endrick going to be unveiled soon. I think they kind of, in terms of the contention between the two top teams and Real Madrid winning so much recently, I think they might be forced into making a signing like this to be like, hey, we're still relevant even though we're kind of rebuilding.
I think that Barcelona is going to I think more than anything, they want this signing for exactly what you said. Real Madrid has these players, we have these players, and we need the little shiny token. And while Lamine Yamal is kind of the shiny token right now, he came through their academy, right? And he's still 16, so he's not going to feature week in, week out. There's going to be, let's hope that they restrict his game time and look out for him because they didn't do that for Ansu Fati and it cost him his career basically up to this point. Like, we'll see if he'll bounce back, but injuries have derailed him. They didn't do it with Ricky Puig, and like he's playing at LA Galaxy.
Ricky Puig, oh my god, LA Galaxy legend.
So we've seen them have a young talent before, and it's like, well, they mismanage him, or they play him too much, or they don't play him enough. So they want that little like, hey, they got Mbappe, but we have Nico Williams, and look at how good Nico Williams was. I think it's important for their brand and how they look from the outside. I agree with that 100%.
For our last topic, we're going to talk about teams who really haven't done anything. There's this lack of action. You have to be active in the transfer window. You have to make moves. I think Pep always says it. It's his famous quote, you have to always make change. You can't have the same players in. You always have to look room to grow. And, speaking of Pep, Man City, I mean, aside from Savio from Girona, who is in that City ownership group, they really haven't made any signings. They haven't been linked to much signings either. But surprisingly for me, Ederson is linked to possibly move to Saudi Arabia and Al Ittihad. Apparently, City are willing to let him go for 40 million euros. That's really shocking for me. I don't know how you feel about that. Apparently, and they're linked, nothing serious to the likes of Diogo Costa and Mike Maignan. But like, apparently from what I'm reading, it's just Stefan Ortega is going to come in if he goes. That's really shocking for me.
It's shocking, but at the same time, I don't think it's that shocking. And I'll say this like this: like, Ederson has had some injury history, and based on the point I just made about like, oh well, like, Ter Stegen doesn't even play for his national team. Ederson's never started over Alisson on his national team, and while I know that in the German sense, like I said that kind of as a meme, but to get the Barca fans off my back, I know Ter Stegen is a better keeper than Manuel Neuer right now. Like, I'm not arguing that Manuel Neuer is still better, but there's some politics in the German side, and Neuer has the respect, so he continues to wear that shirt, and that's fine. I can respect that. In the Brazil squad, it's just that Ederson's not seen as better than Alisson, and when you look at that, like I like Alisson. I'm a fan of Brazil. Check the flag, but Alisson has a mistake in him. We've seen it for Liverpool against Madrid, famously, in that tie that got overturned at Anfield. And the fact that Ederson can't get in over him just shows you that he's great with the ball at his feet, but is he the great shot stopper? Does he really have no mistakes in his locker. The reason I say that Thibaut Courtois is the best keeper in the world is because he has no margin for error a lot of the times, especially with some of the center backs that Madrid have had to trot out there, like fucking Carvajal in the middle of the pitch, like just dying on crosses and corners. And Courtois doesn't make a mistake when he's on there and he's really like on his game. He should have been the man of the match at the Champions League we won against Liverpool like years ago. And even in this one, he kept us in it in the first half when Dortmund were all over Madrid. So I think he's the best player in the world for my money. And I don't see Ederson turning in those performances for Manchester City at the same level. And Pep obviously sees it the same way. Do I think Mark Emmanuel or Diogo Costa are better? They're better shot stoppers, which is maybe Pep just saying like, hey, like I can develop their ball playing ability more. I can make them play with the ball at their feet more, but I can't make Ederson into a shot stopper. It is a bit shocking because I do think Ederson still has time in his career. You know, Manuel Neuer's still playing. John Luigi Buffon played until he was like over 40, right? So like, it's not the end of Ederson's career by any means. And if I was him, I wouldn't accept a move to Saudi and kill my career too early. But I'm not surprised that Pep is kind of seeing like this may be a position where we have a bit more flexibility.
Yeah, another team that I was going to say that is oddly quiet is Liverpool. Arne Slot has come in. We know that they're in that transition phase with Jurgen Klopp. They got their new manager in. It is going to take time, you know, for him to get settled in and play into it, you know, his system and find everything that works. I haven't heard anything with Liverpool. I don't know about you, that they're linked with anyone. And surprisingly, Trent Alexander-Arnold, the midfield experiment didn't work. Who didn't see that coming, right? A right back who can't defend, who's great at crossing the ball, isn't going to be great in a midfield position. Yeah, it was never played there. Yeah, kudos to Southgate and his tactics there. Arnold is linked to Alexander Arnold is linked possibly going to Real Madrid. We know Real Madrid's constantly been rumored to, you know, finding another right back to help, you know, Carvajal take the load off of his minutes. I'm confused why Liverpool is kind of staying pat. I know Arne Slot probably needs time to get in his transfer structure, and I know it's usually not a lot with Liverpool. They let like the manager make a lot of the signings. Like, well, traditionally they didn't, but Klopp was doing a lot of that toward the end of his tenure. But I wonder if like they run the risk of just, you know, being too quiet for too long.
I agree. I think I would be worried if I was a Liverpool fan. I mean, you're basically at this point hoping for Cody Gakpo to show some of the form that he showed at the Euros, and you're hoping for improvements from Jota, and you're looking for Darwin Núñez to be a bit more clinical. And I think Darwin Núñez is amazing, actually. You know, I give a lot of heat to Morata, but like Núñez right now reminds me a lot of Vinicius when he was getting into the right spots, making all these great plays, and it felt like he would score 5 hard chances and then miss 10 easy ones. And you're like, well, why not just hit the 10 easy ones? And then you're scoring 15 goals and then you're one of the best players on the planet, right? And Vinicius has more and more found that balance and found that cutting edge, whereas Núñez is still discovering it. I do worry that they're going to be left in a spot where they want all these players to take a big leap, and to depend on 1 or 2 young players or 2 signings to take a big leap is one thing. To depend on a whole team's worth is quite another indeed, right? I wonder if Arne Slot just isn't getting the players that he wants. I know they were linked with Euro tentatively, and I think that Van Dijk is definitely nearer to the end of his stay as a top center back more than the bottom. So I don't know. If I was a Liverpool fan, I'd be worried because last year you didn't really push for the title, and if you don't make any signings, what's to say you're going to even get a Champions League spot next year?
To play devil's advocate quickly, I mean, when I look at the squad, I don't think they need a lot. At the same time, I do think they can look at it and say we have made, you know, signings who just need more time, like Szoboszlai and who's the midfielder, the defensive midfielder that they signed? I'm blanking on his name. Endo. Endo, I think Endo needs a bit more time. Gakpo as well. Darwin Núñez is coming into himself. Maybe someone in the back line, maybe another center back, you know, with Van Dijk getting older.
They have Diaz too. I really like Diaz.
Diaz as well. So, you know, maybe they're just saying that, you know what, give the players that we signed another year to, you know, just adapt and grow into the Premier League a bit more.
I do think though they need someone on the back line. Like it and they probably need someone in the midfield. I know that McAllister's really good. I think Szoboszlai is really good. I don't know. I just feel like they need something. I don't know what they need, but they need something. And I think I actually do think I know what they need. They need a little bit more steel. They need, unironically, a Jordan Henderson type. Like they just need someone boring and meat and potatoes, and will just make the right play, right? Because I think Szoboszlai is a really exciting player. I think McAllister's a bit of like a metronome, and he can unlock stuff. They just need like a lunch pail guy, and maybe Endo develops into that guy. But they just need someone to carry some water.
So you're saying Calvin Phillips should be their number one priority signing from the city?
Very much like Southgate. They need a Calvin Phillips, okay? They can't win without a Calvin Phillips.
I can't believe you're just saying that. We're saying it here that Liverpool can't win without Calvin Phillips.
That'll be the difference. You've heard it here first.
Yeah. I think it's a good way to end there, I think.
Yeah. I mean, so... to put a bow on this, like, yeah, that's what we think about some of the transfers. I think this will be the first one we release. My co-host here is going on vacation for a bit, so we're going to have to put a little hiatus. But that's perfect time for more transfers and get a better picture of what it's going to be like going into the season. We're going to try to be fairly regular with uploads, and I think we're both excited for the journey of this, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we'll definitely be putting out consistent content. And yeah, definitely when I'm back, there's going to be a lot more signings completed, a lot more rumors, more stuff to talk about. We're getting closer to the season. We're going to do previews. So we're going to be putting out a lot of stuff. It's never a bad day to talk about some footy or some soccer, whatever you like to call it. But we hope you enjoyed this first episode. On behalf of Ruben Chavez, Shayan Karimi, we'll see you on the next one.